Thanks for staying with us. Officials are still searching for this couple, Bart and Krista Halderson. Now, there are a lot of questions about the Dane County couple's disappearance that we are working to get some answers to. But tonight, police aren't saying much. And that led us to the couple's son, who says he's just as confused as investigators.
Their son, Chandler, asked not to be shown on camera, but he told us he didn't see his parents leave and added they didn't drive themselves.
They were picked up by their friends, who I never got the name of. And I assumed it was someone I was aware of, the close neighbors of theirs up the street, or their best friends down on the east side. So that's what I assumed. I never really asked any further.
The first report came on July 7, 2021. A clean-cut 23-year-old walked into a small police station in Windsor, Wisconsin, and calmly told officers his parents were missing. His name was Chandler Halderson. He said Bart and Krista, his hard-working, well-loved parents, had packed up their bags, grabbed some cash and tools, and left with another couple for a long weekend at the family's cabin up north. But something about Chandler's story didn't fit. The cars were still in the driveway. The cabin was untouched, the grass long, the doors locked, and their phones silent. If Chandler was telling the truth, then Bart and Krista had simply vanished into thin air. But if he wasn't, then the truth would be something far darker. Because within days, investigators would uncover one of the most chilling family betrayals Wisconsin had ever seen. A son whose entire life was built on lies. And when those lies started to collapse, he chose to bury the truth in blood. Hi, sweet ones. My name is Grandma Kitty, and before we dive into this disturbing case, ask yourself, how well do you really know the people closest to you? If stories like this grip you to the core, make sure you're subscribed, because these are the kinds of cases you cannot afford to miss. The case would come to be known across headlines as the Halderson Murders, a chilling story of lies, betrayal, and brutality that tore apart a seemingly ordinary Midwestern family. The victims were Bart and Krista Halderson, a couple in their early 50s from Windsor, Wisconsin. Bart, 50, worked as a tax accountant in Madison. Krista, 53, had been a stay-at-home mom for years before taking a job as a receptionist at a local car company. Both were known as hardworking, steady, and deeply involved in their sons' lives. Neighbors described them as the kind of parents who did everything right. They supported their children through school, offered them stability, and even shared the family's cabin up north as a retreat. Krista, sometimes called a helicopter parent, always kept a close watch on Chandler, their younger son, while Bart was the kind of man who expected discipline, honesty, and responsibility. Together, they were well-liked and respected in the Windsor community. On the surface, Chandler Halderson looked like the picture of potential. Born in March 1998, he grew up in Windsor, Wisconsin, with his older brother, Mitchell. Their home was stable, middle-class, and filled with opportunity. Bart and Krista worked hard, provided for their sons, and expected them to succeed. Mitchell largely did. He built a career in tech, found stability, and moved out. But Chandler, he stayed home. By his late teens, Chandler was spinning a story for everyone around him that he was enrolled at Madison Area Technical College, working toward an IT degree and lining up internships and jobs that would launch him into the future. He even claimed to have secured a position with SpaceX in Florida, the dream job of a lifetime. His girlfriend believed it. His parents believed it. Even his brother Mitchell believed it. But Chandler had quietly flunked out of college. There were no transcripts, no enrollment, no job waiting. Every story he told was built on fabricated emails, forged documents, and imaginary phone calls. He was living in his parents' house, day after day, playing video games, pretending to be a busy student and employee. It wasn't always obvious. Chandler had the polish of someone who knew how to say the right things. He'd been an Eagle Scout, a swim instructor, and a lifeguard at the YMCA. On paper, he had the makings of a dependable young man, but behind the image was a different truth. Chandler was caught in a cycle of deceit. trapped in a double life that grew harder to maintain with each passing month. And then came June 2021. Chandler suffered what he claimed was a serious injury, a fall down the stairs that left him in a neck brace, walking gingerly, telling friends he had neurological damage. Doctors, however, diagnosed only a mild concussion. He was exaggerating, even faking symptoms, to sell yet another lie, that his supposed job at SpaceX had slipped away because he was too injured to move to Florida. His parents didn't fully know it yet, but the walls were closing in. By the summer of 2021, the cracks in Chandler's carefully constructed double life weren't just showing, they were widening into gaping chasms that no lie could cover forever. His world was built on layers of deception, and his parents were finally starting to peel those layers back. Bart, steady and methodical, was the first to push harder. Numbers had always been his comfort zone, and when something didn't add up, he noticed. The transcripts Chandler kept promising but never produced. The emails that looked a little too clean. The details of his supposed job at American Family Insurance that seemed to vanish when you asked a second question. Bart had had enough. He wasn't going to sit in the dark anymore. So he picked up the phone himself. He called Madison Area Technical College directly. Within minutes, the truth came out. His son wasn't enrolled, hadn't been for some time. There was no degree, no progress, nothing. For Bart, the confirmation was devastating but clarifying. Chandler had been lying to his face, and that realization was the beginning of the end. Meanwhile, Chandler leaned on his latest excuse, the so-called head injury. After his fall down the stairs in June, he wrapped himself in the role of an invalid, the neck brace. The talk of permanent brain damage, stories about blurred vision, fainting spells, and the inability to work. To outsiders, it explained everything, why he couldn't move forward, why the big plans kept getting delayed. His girlfriend, Kat, and her family even bought into it, showing concern and adjusting their expectations. But the injury story was flimsy. Chandler couldn't name his doctors. He couldn't produce therapy paperwork. He exaggerated symptoms that didn't line up with medical records. To those watching closely, it was all part of a desperate performance. Krista, always softer than Bart, continued to shield her son from the harshest truths. Friends described her as a mother who gave infinite second chances, who believed with enough love, Chandler would eventually stand on his own 2 feet. But by the start of July, even she couldn't ignore the inconsistencies. She was worried not just about Chandler's lies, but about what those lies might mean for their future as a family. Money only made things worse. Chandler had no income of his own, no savings, no prospects. Every meal, every ride, every piece of his lifestyle came directly from Bart and Krista's bank accounts. And when they pressed him about how long this could go on, Chandler had nothing real to say. He was cornered. Investigators would later uncover internet searches that told the rest of the story. Searches for dismemberment, for Wisconsin River body found, for how to get rid of remains. These weren't random. They were the breadcrumbs of a young man staring down the collapse of his own facade and already plotting a way out that didn't involve honesty. And then came the date, July 1st. Bart had arranged a meeting with the college. He wanted Chandler sitting in front of a real advisor, hearing the truth directly. No more dodges, no more forgeries, just cold, hard facts. Chandler knew what that meant. Total exposure. The lies to his parents, to his girlfriend, to his brother, all of it would unravel in an instant. For Chandler, that was unthinkable. It wasn't just embarrassment. It was losing control, losing the only version of himself he had left to hide behind. And if he lost that, he lost everything. What followed wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow-motion collapse, a spiral of paranoia and desperation that left red flags scattered everywhere. The fake injury, the forged emails, the made-up jobs, the late-night trips to nowhere, the odd, almost panicked energy that friends noticed but couldn't quite place. Bart and Krista saw the storm gathering, But they didn't realize how far Chandler was willing to go to keep the storm from breaking over his lies. By the time July 1st arrived, the Halderson household wasn't just tense, it was a powder keg, and what Chandler chose to do next would silence every question his parents were ready to ask forever. If your family uncovered a mountain of lies like this, what do you think Chandler should have done instead of what he chose? Confess, run, or keep lying until the bitter end? Bart and Krista saw the cracks in their son's story, but they never saw the full collapse coming. And that's the tragedy here. Two parents who gave everything, who loved unconditionally, and who paid the ultimate price for believing their child could change. If you're still watching right now, don't just move on. Hit subscribe, leave a comment, and share your thoughts, because cases like this should never be forgotten. Silence only protects people like Chandler. Speaking up keeps their memory alive. July 1st. The Halderson home in Windsor sat quiet, tucked into its suburban cul-de-sac. To neighbors, it was just another Thursday before the holiday weekend. But inside, the walls were about to witness a betrayal so brutal that even seasoned detectives would later struggle to describe it without shaking their heads. That afternoon, Bart Halderson returned home, ready for the meeting he had arranged with Madison Area Technical College. This was supposed to be the moment of truth. Bart had already spoken to a real advisor over the phone and confirmed the worst. His son wasn't enrolled. Now, face to face, there would be no way for Chandler to dodge the facts. Bart texted his son a short, ominous message. "I'm ready when you are." It would be the last text he ever sent. What happened next played out in the quiet of the family home. Bart never made it to the meeting. Chandler shot him in the back with a rifle, the very weapon a friend had gifted him weeks earlier, one that Chandler had described as his favorite because it mirrored a gun he used in video games. When Krista came home later that evening, the house was already heavy with silence. She walked through the door expecting her husband, maybe even expecting a confrontation about Chandler's lies. Instead, she stepped into a trap she never saw coming. Chandler shot her too, but the violence didn't end there. What Chandler did after the killings revealed a level of calculation that shocked even investigators. He began trying to erase his parents piece by piece. He used saws and knives to dismember their bodies, attempting to dispose of them in multiple locations. And yet, even as he carried out this gruesome cover-up, Chandler's facade stayed intact. He texted relatives, insisting his parents had gone away with friends to the cabin. He told his brother Mitchell that everything was fine, that Mom and Dad would be back after the holiday. He even went out swimming with Kat, smiling and lounging by the pool while the bodies of his parents lay hidden in the woods. To those who saw him that weekend, Chandler seemed calm, polite, maybe a little quiet, but nothing alarming. Behind the mask, though, he had already crossed the line from liar to killer. By the time the 4th of July weekend passed, Chandler's story was unraveling fast. His parents hadn't returned. His lies about them being at the cabin were falling apart. And the evidence he left behind, the smoke, the blood, the digital trail, was already closing in. The double life he had worked so hard to maintain was gone. What remained was a double murder and a trail of horror that no lie could ever cover again. On the 7th of July 2021, Chandler Halderson walked into the Windsor Police Department and calmly reported his parents missing. He claimed Bart and Krista had left their home with another couple to spend the holiday weekend at their cabin up north and simply hadn't returned. His delivery was smooth, almost robotic, but beneath the surface, detectives were already uneasy. Bart and Krista's cars were still in the driveway. Their phones had gone silent. Krista had failed to show up for her receptionist job, friends and coworkers said was completely unlike her. Bart hadn't checked in with his accounting firm either. The picture Chandler was painting didn't match the reality investigators were seeing. And then came the digital crack that blew his story wide open. The Snapchat location. Detectives interviewed Chandler's girlfriend, Kat. She told them that on July 3rd, Chandler had claimed he would be home all morning doing chores. But when she opened Snapchat's Snap Map feature, which shows real-time GPS locations of friends, she noticed something strange. Chandler's Bitmoji wasn't at home. It was pinging nearly 40 minutes away in a wooded area near the Wisconsin River by Prairie du Sac. At first, she brushed it off. But to detectives, this was a road map. They dispatched search teams and cadaver dogs to the location. What they uncovered was grisly. Krista Halderson's dismembered legs, discarded near the riverbank. The family's missing persons case had just transformed into a homicide investigation. The search expands. From that moment, investigators zeroed in on Chandler. They learned he had spent part of the holiday weekend at Kat's parents' farm, swimming and acting completely normal. But when Kat's mother looked out toward the fields, she saw his car parked in an odd spot near the woods. Chandler had even disappeared for about an hour, telling them he was using the pool to help his head injury. When police searched those same woods, they found Bart's torso dismembered, stripped of arms, legs, and head hidden not far from where Chandler's car had been. Nearby, an oil drum sat abandoned. Inside were broken saw blades, scissors, and tools soaked in blood. It was clear Chandler hadn't just killed. He had tried to erase the home investigation. While bodies were being discovered in rural fields and riverbanks, detectives searched the Halderson home. Neighbors had already reported strange smells coming from the fireplace. Inside, investigators found charred bone fragments and remnants of skulls Chandler had tried to burn. Upstairs, tucked away in a shoe wrapped in aluminum foil, they discovered Krista's phone, a crude attempt to block signals and buy time. Every new piece of evidence screamed premeditation. The paranoia sets in. By July 8th, the net was closing, but Chandler was still clinging to his lies. He called the police department himself, asking why multiple squad cars were parked outside his home. He claimed he was confused and wondered if something bad had happened. His voice was calm, but his questions revealed growing paranoia. Is everything all right? Is there a warrant for my house? Has something bad happened? Detectives didn't answer directly, but they knew what was coming. At the same time, investigators pulled Chandler's internet history. The searches were damning. Dismemberment, Wisconsin River body found, woman's body, Wisconsin, and even cases of killers caught disposing of remains. He had been studying how others were exposed, a chilling sign of just how deep his planning had gone. On July 8, just one day after filing the missing persons report, Chandler Halderson was arrested. His calm facade as the word son collapsed under the evidence. What began as a bizarre missing persons story had transformed in less than a week into one of the most disturbing parricide cases in Wisconsin history. When Chandler Halderson was arrested in early July 2021, investigators had already built a mountain of evidence against him. But the true test of that evidence would come inside a Dane County courtroom in January 2022, when his case went to trial. The charges, prosecutors didn't hold back. Chandler was charged with 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide, 2 counts of mutilating a corpse, 2 counts of hiding a corpse, providing false information in a kidnapping case. Each charge added weight to a story that was already almost unbearable in its brutality. The courtroom atmosphere. Inside the courtroom, Chandler sat expressionless. Gone was the frantic young man searching for excuses, calling the police about squad cars outside his home. Instead, he appeared detached, his demeanor almost eerily calm as prosecutors detailed how he had killed his parents, dismembered them, and scattered their remains across rural Wisconsin. At times, jurors noted he seemed more like an observer than a defendant, as if the case unfolding was someone else's story. Some even said it looked like he was relieved, as though being caught had freed him from the exhausting web of lies he'd spun for years. The prosecution's strategy was methodical. They started with the lies: Chandler's fake college enrollment, his fabricated job at American Family Insurance, and the fantasy position at SpaceX. They showed the forged emails he'd sent his parents, pretending to be professors and advisors. They revealed his internet searches: dismemberment, Wisconsin river body found, and cases eerily similar to his own. Then came the physical evidence: Bart's torso found near Kat's parents' farm, Krista's legs recovered by the Wisconsin River, tools stained with blood, bone fragments in the family fireplace. Each discovery painted a picture too detailed to dismiss. Neighbors testified about the foul smell from the fireplace. Kat and her family spoke about Chandler's odd trips into the woods, the strange parking spots, and the inconsistencies in his stories. Piece by piece, the image of a panicked but calculating killer came into focus. His defense, by comparison, was almost non-existent. They didn't present a coherent alternative theory. Instead, they leaned on raising doubts. Did anyone know exactly how Krista was killed? Could it have been an accident? Was there a chance someone else was involved? But jurors saw through it. The evidence was overwhelming, and Chandler's silence didn't help. He never took the stand. He never offered an explanation. One of the strangest moments came when Chandler, speaking privately with investigators, allegedly said he'd prefer the death penalty. Wisconsin doesn't have the death penalty, but his words revealed something chilling, almost like he wanted the entire ordeal ended as quickly and as finally as possible. Whether it was guilt, despair, or just another layer of manipulation, no one could say for sure. After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury didn't need long. Chandler was found guilty on all counts. He showed no emotion as the verdict was read. No tears, no anger, no visible regret. When sentencing came, the outcome was inevitable: life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge told him directly that the nature of his crimes, killing both parents, desecrating their bodies, and lying to cover it all up, stripped him of any chance of release. For friends, neighbors, and surviving family members, the trial brought clarity but no closure. Mitchell, Chandler's older brother, sat through the proceedings, forced to relive the destruction of his family in excruciating detail. Outside the courtroom, community members spoke of betrayal, how a young man with every opportunity had thrown it all away in one of the most calculated and horrifying crimes Wisconsin had ever seen. Chandler was led away to begin a sentence he will never escape. No more lies, no more facades, just the cold reality of a cell and the knowledge of what he'd done. Even after the guilty verdict, the Chandler Halderson case left haunting questions that no courtroom testimony could fully answer. Contradictions and shifting narratives. Chandler never confessed to the murders in detail. He didn't take the stand, didn't explain what drove him past the point of no return. But his silence spoke volumes.